Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. Today I'm going to be talking about photography tripods, why you should be using one and what's the best way to use them. Even if you've been taking photographs for quite a while, there are some really cool tips and tricks in here that could help you going forward. So let's get into it and see what it's all about. Hello everyone, so why should you... Let's try that again. Hello everyone, so why should you be using a photography tripod? It's really simple. If you need stability, so in other words, if you're shooting long exposures, or if you're shooting with longer focal length, you're doing astrophotography, or doing a lot of landscape work, it's incredibly important. But there is another aspect people forget about. If you're starting off in photography, you need all the help you can get, because photography is one of these absolutely amazing hobbies or professions, because you know, in a lot of work it's like you think of a lot of work is very technical, a lot of jobs are very technical, right? So you've to understand the technicalities, but in photography you also got the creative element. So you've got the let's say the technical elements you need to know, the technicalities, then you've got the creativity you need to understand and you need to be able to create. So in photography there is this beautiful blend, and I say blend because you need to knit the two of them together. If you want to take good photographs, or if you want to take great photographs, you can't just be technically good, you also need to have a bit of creativity or be creative. And vice versa, you can't just be creative and not understand the technicalities of it, because that's not going to work either. Your photographs are going to be out of focus, you're going to get your depth of field wrong, shutter speeds wrong, all that sort of malarkey. So it's one of those things where you have to knit the two up together. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because if you are starting out in photography, there's a lot going on. Even people who've been taking photographs for 5 or 6 years find themselves a small bit confused at times, and you know, you have an awful lot to consider. You have light to consider, you have your depth of field, you have shutter speeds, you know, your ISO. There's a lot going on. So I always tell people, take it easy, you know, make it easy on yourself. The easier you make it on yourself, the more you're going to enjoy photography. So if you go and buy a tripod, pop your camera up on your tripod and let the tripod support you in your work. So it's simply going to hold it for you. So all of a sudden my camera's now on my tripod and I'm going, Jesus, how am I going to do that? Hey, I've got 2 free hands, I can scratch my head, I can look at my phone, I can write down notes, and I can get something out of my camera bag. My camera's staying in exactly the same spot because the tripod is giving me support. It's holding it for me. So you can step back and you can say to yourself, God, you know, what aperture should I be shooting that at for the correct depth of field? And you could say, God, I saw a video on that there one day, and you go back and you check it or whatever else, you take out your notes and you say, right, I should shoot at f11 for landscapes, bring it up to f11. And you're kind of going, and where should I focus? You can move the focus pointer on the screen, focus, and you say, perfect. So what it's going to do is, it's going to give you a break. It's going to be a helping hand. I usually say to people, it's like a second pair of hands, because it's holding it for you. Otherwise, you're standing here, you're putting your camera up and down, you're trying to adjust your settings, or looking through the viewfinder, adjusting settings, then trying to find buttons, and while you're doing that, you notice my lens is pointing everywhere. So what's actually after happening here now is you're after going out, you're after finding something to photograph, then you're trying to photograph it, but what happens to a lot of people is they see their composition, they say, right, I want to take a photograph of that. They have everything lined up, and then they start changing their settings. And when they change their settings, they're moving their camera around and up and down and pressing buttons and whatever else. And then they say, oh, I think I have all that right now. Then they pop the camera up and they take the shot. And the one thing you'll notice is, like I just did there, is originally I was pointing the camera here because that was my composition. But when I went to take the shot, I pointed it over there. And this is something I see so blooming often. People get so caught up in the technical side of things, they actually forget about the composition. Whereas if you can compose your photograph first and say, look, ultimately, this is what I want to photograph, plop your camera down, put your camera on your tripod, sorry, put the tripod down, put your camera on your tripod, set all that up, and then kind of say, right, no, I'm going to take this shot. No, how am I going to do it? Jesus, I don't know. Let's wing it, and try different settings. Go into aperture priority or shutter priority, or go into manual for the crack, and just mess around with it. Because all of a sudden you've 2 free hands. So you can go into live view. You can manually focus on your foreground, and you can say, right, now I'm going to check my background. Is that in focus? Yes, it is, or no, it isn't. So I'm going to do it again. So you can kind of tweak your settings, and you can get exactly the photograph you want. And the one thing you'll notice about all this now, what I'm saying is, you've slowed down. You have slowed down because you've had to slow down, because you're putting your camera on a tripod and you're changing all your settings and everything else. Now, the one thing is, it's going to help you create better images, both technically and creatively. Because as I mentioned at the start, you went for your composition, you plonked your camera on your tripod, and you set everything up. So that's the first thing. It's helping you from a creative element. Then you're going to get the technical element of it right then too as well again. Now, if you were standing there and if you said, look, I'm going to take a photograph of that, so you take one here and you go bang, 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 and you go up a bit higher, go a bit lower, go to the left, go to the right. You go home and you have 300 photographs, let's say. Out of those 300 photographs, there's 1 or 2 photographs from your day's shoot that you're kind of going, oh, I like those. Usually what happens to people is there might be 10 or 15 photographs and they're saying, oh yeah, but the depth of field is wrong with that one. Oh, my focus missed on that one. Oh, that one is too bright. That one is too dark. Whereas if you can stop and just slow down, take a breath, have your camera on your tripod, set everything up, set your composition, set up your technicalities, your aperture, your ISO, just work away with all that. And treat it as 2 separate elements. And what I generally tell the person is, at the end, when you have your technical elements sorted out, just have a look at it again and say to yourself, right, is this exactly what I want to capture? And if it is, press the button. And hey, you've taken 1 photograph, or maybe you've taken 4 or 5, but all of a sudden you've got exactly the image you wanted. If you think about it, the days of film photography, people had to be really conscious of what they were photographing. They had to really stop and think about it. They had to slow down. So, and I suppose as a result, and this is where I get a bit funny about these things, as a result of slowing down, they put more thought into it. So when you put more thought into something, you tend to create something more, or you put a bit more of you into it. So as a result, you are creating images. You're not just standing there going bang, 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 bang. And yes, you might get it wrong. And you might take 15 images and you might say, oh, my composition was horrible. Right? Or, when you go home after and say, oh my God, I was way too far over to the right there. I should have been more to my left. But the thing with it is, the next day you go out then, you're going to be far more conscious of where you put the tripod. So if you're far more conscious of where you put the tripod, you're going to be far more conscious of your composition. And in here, you're going to be thinking about it. So people, when they set up their tripod, they don't just catch it and plonk it down on the ground. Or if you do, stop doing that. Just stop and think. Just for a split second. Give it 2 minutes. Just stop and have a look around the place and say, right, where am I going to take a shot from? If I moved 2 meters over this way, if I moved 2 meters over that way, if I shot it from a slightly higher angle or a lower angle, should I go further back? Should I go in closer? And just stop and think, just for a minute, just simply 1 minute, stop and think about that. Then put your tripod in that position, plonk your camera on, set it up, and take the shot. And you'll more than likely find the photograph you go home with is going to be 10 times better than the photograph of you hand holding a camera and moving around the place, because you may not put as much thought into it. So it's one of those funny things, and it's why I love using tripods, and it's why I love talking to people and trying to convince them to use tripods. And the last thing, and this is a funny one now, because with photography, we have this thing that I like to call association. So let's say you take a photograph and you're thinking, oh my God, what I wanted to take a photograph of was the boat here and the pier there and the sun over there. It's going to be, a classical image, nice bit of a pier here, nice boat there, let's say a yacht or whatever else, and there's the sunset. You're thinking, oh my God, this is brilliant. People are setting everything up and they're hand holding their camera and they're moving around, they're messing around, whatever else. Even if you put it on the tripod, I've seen this happen to people, right? And they take their photograph. And on workshops, whatever else, you just say to the client, are you happy with that? And they'll say, oh my God, yeah. And I've seen this loads of times. Oh my God, I absolutely love it. So, and we discussed the composition beforehand. So I just asked him, God, could you just grab something, grab a, what you call it, a lens cleaning cloth out of your bag there or something, just give the lens a bit of a wipe maybe but what I'm doing is I'm getting them to look away from the camera, to concentrate on something else for a second. They then go down to the bag and they go to pick up the lens cleaning cloth or a filter or whatever else or different lens, just kind of distract them for a second and say, right, now, don't look up for a second, and what I'll do is I'll just get them to look straight at the back of the camera, not at the view, and I'll press play. And then they'll look at the back of the camera and they'll say, oh my God, half the boat is missing out of the shot. Or, God, I didn't grab the pier at all. But when they looked at it beforehand, when they actually took the shot and when it went to playback, the image on the viewfinder of the camera, they saw nothing wrong with it. Because you're looking up and in your head you're thinking, right, what I'm going to capture here now is the boat, I said the pier, the boat and the sunset, and that's distinctly programmed into their brain. And then when they look down and they see the overall image and they say, that's perfect, that's what I wanted. It's only when they get home, when they're removed from the situation and they look at it, they'll say, Christ, I missed half the boat. Or, Jesus, where's the pier? How did I manage that? The other way you can do it, as I was saying, is take a break. Step back, turn around, look at something else, and then slowly come back up. Do not look at the view in front of you. Press play on the back of your camera, and you can see exactly what you've taken. And that will be one of the first times you've seen exactly what you've taken. And hopefully you'll see it and you'll say, oh my God, I missed half the pier or missed half the boat. And then all you have to do is just loosen the ball head or whatever in the tripod and just turn your camera a tiny fraction and take your shot again. So that's where a tripod is incredibly handy, because everything is staying in place for you, nothing has moved, and you can just simply correct your mistake just by moving slightly. Or maybe using a wider focal length. You could zoom out a bit more, because you're saying, no, look, then I'm going to be cropping a part of the pier. I don't want to spin over this way for the boat, or vice versa. So you can just go wider, and you can get them all in. So that's where tripods really help, because it helps with creativity, even though most people will say, no, it bloomin' doesn't. It helps you. It doesn't help you be more creative, but it helps you tap into that creativity you had when you first saw the image. So it's going to help you set up your composition. It's going to help you then, I suppose, have two free hands. And two free hands, you feel a lot less stressed. So people relax. And when you relax, you're less likely to make a mistake. You're not as stressed. You're not kind of, oh my God, what do I need to know? The sun is setting and all this sort of stuff. You can just kind of go, just chill out for a second and take a shot. So this is exactly why I think tripods are absolutely vital. And it also works for people who've been taking images for 10 years. Because you can see your mistakes. The whole association thing, you can actually see your mistakes before you go home. So it's very handy from that point of view. On the subject of tripods then and whatnot, I bought 2 different tripods over the last 12 months. So I'm going to put up reviews of the 2 of them. The last one I bought, this fella, was a 3-legged thing, Winston 2.0, and I have only used it once. I've had it now for... Sorry, that's not true. That isn't true. I have used this in a few commercial shoots. I've only used it once on landscapes, and you can see that because of the fact that it is so blooming clean. It's ridiculous. So but one of the things, this is one of the tips and tricks I have for people when they're taking photographs, and especially on seascapes. And this is where I see a very common mistake with people on seascapes. So firstly is pop out the legs of your tripod. If I move my camera out of the way there now for a second. So the first thing you're going to want to do is, if you're taking images of the sea, you're probably gonna get a bit wet, you know. So if you're wearing wellies and whatnot, grand job. Go in a pair of shorts, that's fine too as well. If your feet are staying dry, then you're probably not in the right place to be taking seascapes. Is the way I see it a lot of times, unless you're taking from a cliff. If you're taking photographs from a cliff, your feet shouldn't be getting wet. let's just put that one out there straight away. You know, but, sorry. I don't know. Every now and then I just think, God, there's going to be someone somewhere now watching this at the cliffs of Moher and kind of going, but my feet aren't getting wet. So getting back to the seascape side of things, the first mistake I see people doing is with the tripod, right? The thicker legs are obviously the more stable ones. So normally speaking, I would say you extend the second thickest legs next. But with seascapes, what I normally say to a person is, you would normally extend the smaller legs first. For the simple reason being is, if you think about it, if you're standing in, let's say, 6 or 7 inches of water, let's say, the water's rushing around, the water is going to come up, I don't know if you can see that here now or not, but the water is going to be coming up to around here, let's say, roughly, right? So what's going to happen is, the knuckles, or the joints, or the locks, the leg locks, are going to be kept out of the water, which is going to help you in two ways, because sand in the water is a pure pain in the backside. If that knuckle is down low here, and if it's in the water, you're going to get sand into the joints here, and it's going to make those legs very hard to open and close and release up and down and whatnot, and it's also not going to help your tripod going forward. If you have any metal joints or metal springs on the clasps of your tripod legs, they're going to corrode really quickly. So I'd normally say extend those joints first. That's the first thing. The second thing with it is, I see people and they plonk their camera down the sand. Now this is something I posted in a blog post, I know it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I think originally. But what I normally do with it is, let's say we just shorten that because you won't be able to see it otherwise. When I plonk my camera down on the sand like this, as the water is coming and going, what it's going to do is, it's going to undermine the foundation of these legs. So the sand underneath these legs is going to start moving. So what's going to happen is, the leg is going to slowly sink. So what I normally do is, I would have the legs out like that, and I will catch my tripod and push down. So I'm pushing it into the sand. So when it's pushed down into the sand, it usually goes around that depth into the sand. You're usually going 2 or 3 inches down into the sand. So what that's going to do is, the sand is going to sort of solidify after a few waves around the legs. So instead of the legs being slow, let's say slowly moving down as you're taking your photographs and creating blur in your images, if you're shooting long exposure photographs, of course, what it's going to do is, it's going to wrap around the legs and it's going to hold the legs in place for you. So instead of it being a negative, all of a sudden it's a positive. One of these days I'm gonna, because I have a vlog coming up too as well on Seascape photography tips, I'm gonna actually show you this in action. So I'm gonna head out to the beach. Thanks be to God we can do that now again. I'm gonna head out to the beach. I'm gonna show you exactly what I'm talking about. But it makes an absolutely massive difference to your images, to your seascapes, because it's going to make your tripod a lot steadier. Because you can have even things like seaweed now and whatnot coming flying up along the beach and hitting your tripod leg. If that leg isn't bedded in properly into the sand, what's going to happen is, it's going to hit it and it's going to move the leg. So when it moves the leg, it's moving the whole tripod, and now your image is blurred. Whereas if that leg is bedded down in, the sand is holding on to it, the seaweed comes up, hits it, the leg doesn't go anywhere. The tripod shouldn't move, and away you go, you have a perfect photograph. Well, that's the hope anyway, but it's definitely going to help. So that's the first thing with shooting with tripods when you're shooting seascapes. So if you're not using a tripod, you really should. And if you're starting out, it doesn't need to be a fantastic tripod. But the one thing I would say to people going forward, if you're seriously interested in photography, then I would highly recommend you buy a decent tripod, because camera bodies change regularly. Cards change regularly. I see people go out and they're spending 150, 200 euros on a memory card, and then they spend 50 euros on a tripod. And you're kind of going, the memory card isn't going to make that much of a difference to your photograph. Sure, it's going to be a higher capacity. And just while we're talking about memory cards, Jesus, this is typical of me. I go from one subject to the next. Rather than buying a 256 gigabyte, SD card or compact flash card, CF Express card or whatever is XQD card you're using, rather than spending a really high capacity one, I normally tell people buy a good few lower capacity ones. Because firstly, if you lose the card, all your images aren't gone. Secondly, it's going to be cheaper for you. And thirdly is, you should always have a spare SD card inside in your camera bag. Because it happens, you head out and you're going taking photographs and you suddenly remember, oh my God, the SD card is in my laptop. You can't take any photographs. If you have a spare card, and it's funny, I've said this to numerous people, even put in a 4 gigabyte SD card, something you're not going to use for anything else. A really low capacity SD card, and you say, oh, but that thing's only rubbish. Even if it's an old one, pop it in, sew it into a pocket or something, or just something along those lines. And you can just go in and you say, oh my God, I've climbed halfway up a mountain, I have my backpack here with me, I have everything with me, I have no memory card. You could say, oh, but I still have that really rubbish one. And you can just go into your bag and take it out. And that really rubbish SD card is just after saving your life, So it's funny, those small little things make a massive difference. So, people get really caught up with gear and photography. Photography equipment is important, but it is only important if your equipment limits you. If the equipment isn't limiting your photography, then you don't need it. So, there's a lot of people who have gear acquisition syndrome, GAS as they call it, that, oh my God, God, Sony just brought out a new camera, or Canon did, or Nikon did, or whatever, I need to have it. And you're kind of going, but why? What's it going to do for you? How is it going to improve your photography? Would you not be better off investing more by doing workshops, by buying a decent tripod, by buying a few SD cards, by buying a lens maybe, or improving your photography by other means? Because a lot of the times, camera bodies are great today and they're gone 3 years later. So do yourself a favour, invest in a decent tripod. Again, I've only used this one very few times, so I'm not recommending this as of yet. I'm not saying that I'm not recommending it, but I suppose I just need to try it a little bit more going forward. But I'm also going to talk about the other tripods I've used too as well, another vlog one of these days. So look, I hope you enjoy this, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below if you have any thoughts on it. Are these actually worthwhile? Are you enjoying the content? And other than that, I suppose if you haven't subscribed, please do. And yeah, I'll see you soon. See you out there.